Yesterday, the New York Mets made the surprising call to bring Nick Morabito up to join the big league club. On today's show, we're going to discuss that, and also the Mets were the bad news bears for a night.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein, and on today's show, a rough game to discuss and also an evolving roster. How will Nick Morabito fit into the fold? Does this mean less playing time for AJ Ewing or Carson Benge? First game of the new roster. It did mean less playing time for AJ Ewing. We'll talk about that more in the next segment. But this game for the Mets on Tuesday night was an ugly one. You started off with a absolutely scorching start from Bo Bichette, who hits 2-run homers in back-to-back innings. In the first inning, Carson Benge leads off the game with an infield single. Probably could have been a play made by C.J. Abrams there, but regardless, Benge gets on base. Bo Bichette hits a 2-run homer. Then you had Juan Soto single, then Mark Vientos doubled. Marcus Semien came through the sac fly. The Mets are up 3-0 before Nolan McLean steps on the mound. Bottom of the first inning, Nick Morabito helps out McLean with a leaping catch that saved the double. That also probably saved a run. McLean was able to then strike out C.J. Abrams to get through that first inning. Top of the second, Bo Bichette hits that second 2-run homer. Again, it was Carson Benge on base ahead of him, this time with a single that made it into the outfield, and then Bichette cranked another. You win 5-0. Your ace is on the mound going to the bottom of the second inning. Feeling pretty good about the Mets' ability to win that game, and then everything just fell apart. Nolan McLean gets the first 2 outs in that inning. Then he gives up a double. And then he has Drew Milas up, the Nationals' backup catcher, who he gets ahead on 0-2. Milas has a 509 OPS. That's the guy you got to attack. Unfortunately, McLean hits him with a pitch. Had he just thrown that pitch in the zone, picks up a strikeout, game's completely different, you probably win. Instead, that extends the inning. Then Asim Nunez gets a base hit, one in the hole. Bichette does a nice job just to get to it, but Nunez flies. There was just no play at that point. Now you got the bases loaded, and all of a sudden they've turned the lineup over. Here comes James Wood, and Wood crushes one to deep left center field. Nick Morabito nearly makes an unbelievable catch, leaping, coming up against the wall, and the ball just hits off the palm of his hands and ricochets away. And Tyrone Taylor, look, I understand why the guy has been playing the last couple of days. He had the biggest hit of the season with that 3-run homer against the Yankees. Swinging the bat pretty well at the moment. I mean, this game, not as much, but Tyrone Taylor, we've seen in the past, he can go through stretches where he gets hot for 7 to 10 days, and every single at bat he hits the ball hard, and then typically he goes back to being, a typical fourth outfielder, right? Where Tyrone Taylor shouldn't be in the starting lineup. I get it, lefty on the mound. I'm not going to sit here and complain too much about the fact that Tyrone Taylor was in the game. We'll talk about playing time and everything else with Nick Morabito now on the roster more in the next segment. But Tyrone Taylor this year has not been as elite defensively as we've seen in the past. A handful of plays where it just seems like he's not as engaged as usual. Could be nothing. I'm sure he's still a great defender, and this is just a blip on the radar. But in that game where he hit the massive 3-run homer, he made a couple mistakes. There was one play on a pop-up that Bo Bichette's going back on. Tyrone Taylor is not taking charge of that fly ball. Bichette drops the pop-up. There was another play in that game where Tyrone Taylor completely airmailed the cutoff man. Just not typical for him to be lacking in fundamentals. And in this moment, you can say, hey, it's not his fault. Crazy play. It was just wonky. Morabito, to even get there, probably throws off Tyrone Taylor. He's not expecting, it's a new player for him to play with in the outfield. Maybe he's not anticipating that the left fielder is going to get all the way to that ball to the point where maybe Tyrone should have been laying off a little bit to try to field a ricochet. But regardless, he had no sense of urgency, and I guess he just didn't know where the ball was. Still wasn't a good look, As the ball trickles away, Nick Morabito, who just put his body on the line, is the one that has to get to that ball and throw it in. And at that point, it's too late. James Wood, an inside the park grand slam. If Tyrone Taylor was a little more plugged in and engaged and followed that ball and where it ricocheted off of Morabito's hand, or even was looking for it, because he just seemed to be in no man's land staring at Morabito on the ground like he was checking on him, and that ball gets away. Had Tyrone Taylor identified it and ran after it, maybe there's a play at the plate. Regardless, just a weird play. And at the end of the day, the biggest mistake of the inning was not Tyrone Taylor not getting to that ball. It was Nolan McLean, who was ahead 0-2 on Drew Milets, hitting him with the pitch and extending that inning. That was the big problem. You could have got through that inning unscathed, and it's a completely different ball game. It's still on McLean. He just doesn't pitch well in this one. But that was a play that just didn't look great. And honestly, it was just the tip of the iceberg for the Mets defensively in this game, because they were brutal. They were absolutely brutal. Bottom of the third inning, at the Mets did not score in the top of the third. McLean gives up a home run to lead off that inning. All of a sudden, that 5-4 lead, or that 5-0 lead is gone. The 5-4 lead was gone as well. It's now 5-5. You had a 5-0 lead. You completely blow it. Then he walks C.J. Abrams. Then he gives him a base hit to put runners on at the corners. And then you have a really bad pass ball by Luis Torrens. Just one that he's got to catch. I mean, it wasn't a pitch that was that terrible, and that allows a run to score. McLean then gets the first out of the inning on the ground. Second one comes on a fly ball that went into the left field stands, but Nick Morabito brought it back. An unbelievable catch. If you want to get picky, you could say, hey, you got a runner on third base, one out. Ball in the stands, you let that go so the runner doesn't get to score at the same time. You were just trying to get outs however you could, and you can't really knock the guy for the effort. Unbelievable catch to jump into the stands and make that play, and then you have a chance to get out of the inning with a 7-5 score, which you do. So I was impressed by the outfield defense from Morabito, and we'll talk about him more in the next segment. That side of things is going to be a lot of fun with all the kids up right now. The Mets go down in order in the fourth. Then the bottom of the fourth inning, McLean again runs into trouble, gives up a leadoff single to James Wood, gets a fly out. Then he gets what probably should have been a double play ball, but Marcus Semien boots it and then makes a terrible throw that allows the runners to advance. And all of a sudden, you got runners at second and third with one out. Next play, Bo Bichette fields a ground ball, comes home with it. Torrens has to make that catch. He has to. He doesn't, and all of a sudden, both runs score. So instead of having a tag play at the plate where you get the out, all of a sudden now 2 runs come across. So I will say that fourth inning, not really on Morabito. Of course not on Morabito. Not really on McLean. So many young kids, hard to keep up with all the names. No, that one's not on McLean, that inning. I mean, he gets 3 outs pretty clearly, right? You get the fly out. You get the ground ball to Semien where now it's not converted. And, you have a ground ball to Bichette, and there should have been an out at the plate. And if things had been different and Semien, instead of booting it and making the bad throw, had just fielded it cleanly or even just put a good throw to second base, and you had a runner on first instead of runners at second and third, it's a completely different inning. Bad defense, ugly game, and all of a sudden the Nationals have a 9-5 lead. And the Mets just couldn't come back from it. You got to give Nolan McLean some credit, though, even though he did not pitch well. You look at the final line, 8 hits allowed, walked 2, gave up 9 runs, 6 of them earned, struck out 5, allowed 2 home runs in this one. ERA goes up to 3.57. See where it was previously. I think he was in the mid-2s. His last time out, he gave up 3 over 7. His ERA was 2.92 going into the start. Now, again, 3.57. Not a good outing for him, but give him credit to get through the 5th inning with a 1-2-3 frame and then strike out 2 batters in the 6th before hitting a batter and getting pulled for a team that was really gassed in the bullpen. And they made the decision not to make a roster move to get a fresh arm because they had confidence in McLean to give them length. And then they had Daniel Duarte, who was fresh, to pitch after him. Credit to McLean for still finding his way to 17 of the 27 outs of the game. And he ended up not needing all 27 outs because you didn't even have to pitch to the Nationals in the 9th because you lose. But Daniel Duarte does a great job coming in and getting the other 7 outs for the Mets and saving the rest of the bullpen. So if there's a silver lining from this game, it's the fact that the Mets are able now, hopefully, to reset that pen a little bit with Zach Thornton about to take the mound for the third game of the series, and he will make a start in his MLB debut. And you can hopefully win that game and still have a chance to win this series. But that first game, even though it was a 16-7 win by the Mets, it went to the 12th inning. It could have gone either way. Right now, you're 1-1 in this series, and it's been a very weird series. You played really bad baseball defensively on Tuesday night. You flush it, and you try to move on. Hopefully the Mets can get back on track later tonight. But we're going to talk about the next segment is the addition of Nick Morabito, a bit of a surprising promotion. How does he fit? What does this mean for the playing time for both AJ Ewing and Carson Benge as well? We're going to talk about all of that here in just a minute. The NBA playoffs are here where every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified. Every game can swing a series. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and you're going to get $150 in bonus bets. Your first bet wins. That's right. You can turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. The app makes it so easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups that are all waiting for you there in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight is what's going to really matter when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. Just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. So head over to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com and place that first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. If you got a sweet tooth like I do, you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. But that's why the Cotton Candy 5 Hour Energy Shot is there to bring you that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. It's that classic cotton candy taste you remember, but with the tasty caffeine boost and zero sugar. It's quick, it's easy. It's the best way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. I've always loved cotton candy, but I can't be eating sweets all day. This is that perfect alternative where you're getting the flavor that really does bring back that throwback of a fruity vanilla vibe, and it's surprisingly smooth. It's also super convenient. You can take it on the go, small, portable, easy pick-me-up to have on hand whenever you need it. It's become my go-to. Might be yours as well. Bring on the sweetness with Cotton Candy 5 Hour Energy Shots available online or at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 17,000 subscribers. All right, so let's go through the new roster for the New York Mets because Nick Morabito coming up was a bit of a surprise, but there was multiple roster moves that we'll touch on first. For one, Austin Slater DFA'd. He didn't do much for the Mets. I'll say he's not a big leaguer. The guy's been in the big leagues for a little bit, but he's not going to noticeably change winning for the New York Mets. Wasn't playing that much. You are automatically sitting with a better roster by having Nick Morabito there instead of Austin Slater. But the other move, Clay Holmes was transferred to the 60-day IL, and Anderson Severino was added to the 40. We've been talking about Severino a lot on this show. He's been lights out in Syracuse, left-handed reliever who has been, for some reason, nails against righties more than lefties this year. Some really stark reverse splits, but regardless of that, he throws really hard. He's now on the 40-man roster. Now, he was designated to AAA after getting on the 40, and the reason why the Mets did this, he had an opt-out clause in his contract. So it's either add him to the 40 or potentially lose him. He's on the 40-man roster, and he has options. So the Mets send him down. You now can't call him back unless it's for an injured player for the next 15 days, but he is now an option that you can call on at some point. So that is the roster maneuverings the Mets made. Now let's talk about Morabito and his role in the Mets. For those of you who aren't familiar with Nick Morabito, one of the Mets' top prospects, he was hitting in Syracuse, 253, 364 on base, 390 slug, 4 home runs, 14 stolen bases on 16 attempts. He is probably the fastest guy in the Mets organization, which is saying a lot when you got AJ Ewing and Carson Benge on the big league roster. But Morabito really is super quick. And well, who knows? Maybe at some point we'll see Ewing and Morabito do a little foot race. Maybe they'll do the old game that we did back in travel. You know, one guy starts off running down the first base side. The other guy starts running to third base, and you do that relay race. Maybe the Mets do that and see who's actually quicker. But Morabito is going to bring you a ton of speed. He's probably even still the Mets' best defensive outfielder out there of those three. It's tough. They're all good in different ways. You know, Benge has the best arm. Nick Morabito, I would say, probably takes the best routes on balls, and we certainly saw that in this game. AJ Ewing is still a little bit more of a work in progress defensively, as he's not a natural outfielder. He was a shortstop when he was drafted. Has still played a lot of second base, more so played center field. But right now, Carlos Mendoza said he's comfortable playing Morabito in any spot, comfortable playing Benge in any spot. They're keeping AJ Ewing in center where he's gotten the most exposure, and his athleticism will continue to play there. But you have a chance now. At some point, we could see all three of these guys in the starting lineup at once, and that would be an incredibly quick outfield that should be able to steal a lot of outs in the gaps. So that's the part of this that is very simple, right? Morabito is going to give you a more athletic option, certainly, than Austin Slater, a guy that can play all three spots in the outfield that brings a lot when it comes to the defensive side of things and speed to the base pass. So if you have him on the bench for a given day, that is a real weapon that you can call on. So that part is really exciting. Also, this year, although in the past it wasn't always this way, but this season, Morabito has been a lefty masher. He's hitting .333 against left-handed pitching, .421 on base, .515 slug. So that's a .936 OPS against lefties in the minor leagues. Now, started against the lefty in this one, didn't do anything offensively, but this now is an option that you have against lefties, and I'm sure he'll be in there against all lefties, and he'll even get some playing time against righties. With the way the Mets roster is currently set up, you can start to pull the playing time away from MJ Melendez a little bit, DH Juan Soto a little bit more, and you can have games where you stick Morabito in left, Benge in right, and Ewing in center, and you play all the kids. Now, how long will that last? It just depends on when the Mets are able to make another roster move. And we will talk in the next segment about the guys that are coming off the IL. Jared Young is on a rehab assignment. He's already up in Syracuse. So he is an option that can come up at some point in the not too distant future. Jorge Polanco will give a little injury update there. He could start a rehab assignment in the next couple of weeks. And Francisco Lindor even could come back at some point in the month of June. So when you have all these guys coming back soon, there will be some roster maneuvering that will take place as each guy comes back. I think for now, Morabito, his spot is safe because even if Jared Young comes back in 3 days, I think Young probably replaces MJ Melendez on the roster because it doesn't make a lot of sense for function of the roster to have Melendez and Young both on the team at the same time. They're both left-handed bats. They hope can give you some pop, guys that can play for Jared Young, first base, Melendez, the outfield, but really it's more guys that should be factoring into your DH mix. Jared Young actually brings you more defensively than Melendez because you can stick him at first. You can stick him at second or third if you wanted to. It probably just more first base and corner outfield. We'll see. Again, we'll talk about that side of it more in the next segment. How does Jared Young get acclimated back on the roster? And also Polanco and Lindor, everything else. But when it comes to Morabito right now, you can start to pull back Tyrone Taylor's playing time a little bit and get Morabito in there a good amount. The thing that concerned me the most when I saw the promotion, the reason why this really caught me off guard is simply because I assumed that Tyrone Taylor would continue to play for a little bit because of the big home run, because even in Monday's game, he swung a pretty good bat, is hitting the ball hard. This is one of those rare kind of hot streaks for Tyrone Taylor, as I alluded to earlier, where it's not the worst in the world to get him out there and ride it out while you have it. So just because Tyrone Taylor was playing well, and I loved seeing AJ Ewing and Carson Benge play every day, my initial reaction was, this is going to take playing time away from the other kids. And it did in this game. AJ Ewing was not in there. But the more I've had time to sit on it, the more I understand it, especially with where the Mets are at in the schedule. This is a stretch where they're playing 16 games in 16 days. They do not have an off day this week. And then next week, their off day doesn't come until Thursday. Carson Benge and AJ Ewing, you might say these kids are in their early 20s. They can play every day. And yeah, you are right about that in one sense. Obviously, physically, they can get out there. But minor leaguers now have a little bit more of an easier schedule than big leaguers do because they only travel once a week and they play 6 games in the same spot, and then they travel again and they have an off day. So, that schedule has gotten very easy on minor leaguers, and rightfully so. It's a good thing. It's also cut down travel costs. This is all part of kind of the reformatting of the minor leagues after COVID, and it is definitely an improvement for these guys. There's no doubt about it. I mean, these guys don't need to be miserable in the minor leagues to get themselves ready for the big leagues, but it does create more of a learning curve when you come out to the big leagues that all of a sudden you are traveling sometimes every 3 days. And in this case, you don't have any off days for more than 2 weeks. So this is a move that allows you to, for one, get way more athletic, having Morabito instead of Slater. You're now always going to have a really athletic guy on the bench, whether it's Tyrone Taylor and all 3 kids are playing, or if Morabito's on the bench because there's a righty on the mound and you have the lineup that we've seen lately get out there with MJ Melendez in the lineup or eventually Jared Young, then all right, Morabito's off the bench. And at some point you could have, Mark Vientos doubles in the 7th inning and Nick Morabito can come in and pinch run for him and, potentially go and score on any base hit or steal third base, whatever it is. So that wrinkle is really fun for the Mets to have a guy like that on the bench at all times. And also, you get rid of a guy in Slater who wasn't doing anything for you, and against left-handed pitching, you can now, if you want to, not have to throw Tyrone Taylor out there, and you can play Morabito and still play the other guys as well. So it's one of those things where we'll see how the playing time ends up getting split up over the next couple of days. Carson Benge probably gets a day on the bench at some point, and Morabito will go out and play right with Ewing in center. And who knows, maybe Ewing will bat leadoff in that game. And you just see how things kind of evolve from there. But I think Nick Morabito is going to get enough playing time right now where it can be justified. As long as he's playing 4 times a week, I think that you're in a good spot. And I imagine that if the Mets have an off day in a given week, like next week, Carson Benge and AJ Ewing will still play every game. And so as the roster is currently constructed, this can work. Now, will Nick Morabito be on the Mets roster for the long haul? That's the part that I don't really think is going to happen, where he's going to stick on this roster for months. I think this is sort of a move for the immediate future. But once you start to get a little bit healthier, and that's a big if, then things might end up getting to a point where Morabito is forced off. So that's what I want to talk about next. Who's coming off the IL next, and how do the Mets continue to adjust as their injured stars start making their way back onto this roster? Today's episode is brought to you by Nutrafol. Baseball's full of routines and suspicions, rally caps, lucky jerseys, all of it. And honestly, it can be the same when it comes to products for hair thinning too. A lot of hype, not always a lot of confidence behind it. That's why there's Nutrafol, the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand and the official hair growth partner of Major League Baseball. Nutrafol takes a more personalized approach with formulas that are designed for different stages and needs. It's physician formulated, clinically tested, and NSF certified for sport. And adding it to the routine's very easy. Just 4 capsules daily with a meal. You're all set. Find out why Nutrafol is the only hair growth supplement brand trusted by Major League Baseball. And for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now it's time to take it up a level and go ad-free. Join our Everyday Club. You're going to get Locked On Mets without the interruptions. You get access to our Discord. We can chat with other Mets fans. You also get access to a merch shop. If you want to be part of our Everyday Club, you can find a link in the episode description, or you can go to lockedonmets.supercast.com. All right, so let's go through here and talk about the Mets injury updates that we've gotten this week. Jorge Polanco has, as we've known, the ankle injury. Actually, it's Achilles bursitis is now what they're describing the injury as. Team officials do not have much clarity. This is from an article by Anthony DiComo on MLB.com about Polanco. So it says team officials don't have much clarity on Polanco's situation, or don't have more clarity than when he landed on the IL. Firmer answers could come soon. It says late last week, Polanco entered a strengthening phase of his rehab. The hope is that he can begin a minor league assignment in about a week or so, at which point the Mets will gauge his ability to effectively play through the discomfort. As Polanco says, they explained it to me. It's going to be painful. It's a tolerance of pain right now. So I'm just getting to the point where I can work it out and get it strong so I can play. And that's pretty much it. So at this point, it's a matter of seeing if he can play through this injury. And if not, they would have to then have a procedure which could sideline him for weeks, if not months, where they operate on the inflamed bursal tissue, shave it down, and that could relieve the pain. So it's a very interesting situation the Mets are with Jorge Polanco, because right now the plan is to see if you can play through it. If not, you go to the worst case scenario where you surgically address it. That will then immobilize him. He then will have to have a longer ramp up time whenever he does get healthy. And that could mean, no Jorge Polanco this season or no Jorge Polanco for months. So they're trying to avoid that. They still want to get his bat back in the lineup, and rightfully so. We'll talk about MJ Melendez's numbers in a minute here, but they've really tailed off. And the underlying numbers when he was, hitting well, we talked about this on the show at one point, they did suggest that there was a lot of luck in place for Melendez. So having Polanco back to DH, that should help this team, assuming that this injury does not limit him offensively. And I think if it was limiting him, if it was too much to play through, they would just operate on it and they would get this taken care of. So for now, he's going to take a crack at this. Once he starts a rehab assignment, then you can start to really, imagine him in the lineup in the not too distant future. Until then, it's still the shrug that we've been getting on Jorge Polanco for a while now, where it's, who knows, we'll see what happens. But there's at least now a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel where they're anticipating giving it a shot to get him ramped up again. Now, Francisco Lindor, according to John Heyman, there's hope that he may return in about a month. He's now strengthening the calf and trying to get it in a good place. And at some point, then he'll be full bore running. And once he's running and everything, then you can either get him on a rehab assignment, or sometimes with an established veteran like Lindor, once he's game ready, they'll pull him off the IL. But first and foremost, the guy that should be back on this roster the soonest, as we talked about earlier, is Jared Young. Jared Young has seen his rehab now move to Syracuse. I think he played like a game, or maybe 2 games in St. Lucie. Now he's back in Syracuse. 0 for 3 on Tuesday, played 7 innings at first base. So that's a good sign. Jared Young, at some point, I think, should replace MJ Melendez on the roster. Now, you have 30 days of a rehab assignment for Jared Young. Let's just say he's taken 4 of them up to this point. And I don't know the exact number of days. I didn't pull that for the show. It doesn't really matter, though. I think you take a couple weeks here and make sure he's good. Doesn't mean 2 full weeks, but I don't think that you see him at all this week, and it might even stretch into next week. You might wait until you come home. Let's see, they come home after. I know they play DC, Miami. Is there another series on the road? No, you do play at home after that. But maybe you give him a week and change of games here in Syracuse. So you play him all week. Has an off day on Monday in Syracuse. You play him Tuesday, Wednesday. Team has an off day on Thursday next week, and maybe you have him come back next weekend potentially. We'll see how long it takes, how many at-bats they want to give Jared Young. I would not just force him right back. I would let him play a little bit in Syracuse to get his legs under him a little bit more. But the swap that's probably going to happen here is MJ Melendez for Jared Young. And in the meantime, you can use this opportunity to give Nick Morabito a little more playing time at the big league level so that he can have his transition to the big leagues into a bench role eased a little bit before he has to get more used to playing an infrequent schedule. When Jerry Young comes back, I mean, the guy was one of your better hitters when he went down. I would absolutely be giving him run at DH. You can also have him play first base and have Vientos DH, although I would keep Vientos because of what's going on with Polanco. I would want Mark Vientos to soak up as many reps as possible at first base in case he really is your starting first baseman for the rest of the year. Now, the more and more you get healthy, when Jorge Polanco comes back, well, now Brett Beatty might eat into some playing time at first base for Vientos, even more so when Francisco Lindor comes back. That's when you can really see Vientos' playing time cut and Beatty getting more time there. It's all going to be a meritocracy. Whoever's playing well is going to get the run. But this is an evolving situation where, it's really not guaranteed who's going to be in the starting lineup over time. All that you know is Juan Soto, Bo Bichette. Those guys are going to be in there. Benge, I think, has proven to be an everyday player. Hopefully AJ Ewing as well. But when you have Nick Morabito on the roster, there's going to be a little more of a timeshare going on. There's going to be a little bit more of a rotation to it. And at the end of the day, that's fine when it's another top prospect that's getting time. I would hate it if Austin Slater was eating into AJ Ewing's playing time or Carson Benge's playing time. If it's Nick Morabito, I can stomach that a little bit more, but I still think Ewing and Benge have proven enough up to this point that they should be getting a majority of the run until you really start to get healthy. And I think the only thing that should potentially limit those guys playing time would be Luis Robert coming back, but there's still no indication whatsoever that Robert's coming back in the immediate future. There's every chance he might be on the IL even longer than Lindor. So for now, this is the roster the Mets currently have, where your starting lineup could be Carson Benge batting leadoff and right. You got Bichette at short, Soto batting third, playing left. Vientos could be, you're starting for Vientos will continue to be your starting first baseman. You then could go with, if you wanted to, a lineup that has MJ Melendez, or it could be Nick Morabito and left and Soto at DH for the time being. Brett Beatty's going to be in there at third base, Simeon at second, and Terrence is obviously your starting catcher right now. It'll be interesting to see how it all sorts itself out. But for now, I think we'll see a lot of the kids this week, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Once you get Jared Young back, that'll probably eat into some of their playing time, particularly Morabito's against right-handed pitching. But hopefully he can adjust to a more limited role. Once you get Polanco back, I think then Morabito would probably be the guy that gets sent down, assuming you're going to continue to roster Tyrone Taylor. And even Vidal Brujan would be the other guy that you could send down instead of Morabito, but I think they're going to like keeping a backup shortstop on the roster. So Young comes back. That'd be the first move. Let's say Polanco comes back next. Now maybe Morabito goes down, and obviously Melendez going down for Young. And then when Lindor comes back, Brujan goes down, and then playing time really gets complicated because Bichette no longer is at short. Slide him back to third. Well, then where does Brett Beatty go? Is he your first baseman? Well, if Vientos is swinging a good bat, well, now is Beatty getting his playing time in the outfield again? That's where things would get a little bit more complicated for the Mets. But for now, you just wait and see when these guys get healthy in these situations, tend to resolve themselves. I will say one of the things that is interesting that the Mets can do here, when they get Lindor back, you could see Marcus Simeon's playing time start to decrease a little bit, and Bichette can play some second base. You also could, if you wanted to keep Bichette at third and keep him on the left side of the infield, Beatty can play some second base. The other option, you could have AJ Ewing play some second base. So the Mets have a roster that's really deep right now. It's exciting to see these kids, get their opportunity to make a big league impact. And the more and more you get healthy, the deeper that bench gets and the more dangerous this team can really become. First up, will probably Jared Young, maybe Polanco, not too far behind. But when you get Francisco Lindor back, that's when the decisions really start to get hard. But also that's when the team could really take off. So excited to see what's next for the Mets. We'll see how Nick Morabito and the other kids do throughout the rest of this series. Hopefully you can get a big win today. You got Zach Thornton on the mound for the Mets. Is it Zach Littell going today or tomorrow for the Nationals? I want to say it's Littell today. Yeah, Littell today, Cade Cavalli tomorrow. 6:45 start. We'll see how the Mets fare. I'll be back with another show tomorrow morning, breaking down everything that we saw in this game and more. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network.